Thank you for visiting Nancy's Classic Bedtime Stories. I'm Nancy, and I'm continuing in the last part of the essential wisdom of the Founding Fathers. I'm picking up where we left off last night. We were abruptly cut off. I think my phone ran out of juice, so we will start there again. We are in Family and Friends. All who saw my grandson Benny agreed of his being an uncommonly fine boy, which brought often afresh to my mind the idea of my son Frankie, though dead many years ago, whom I have seldom since seen equaled in everything, and whom to this day I cannot think of without a sigh. Benjamin Franklin, from his autobiography. He is a delightful little fellow. I love him too much. John Adams, letter to Abigail Adams, writing about Charles, 1780. Should you or Lawrence therefore behave in such a manner as to occasion any complaint being made to me, you may depend upon losing that place which you now have in my affections, and any future hopes you may have from me. But if, on the contrary, your conduct is such as to merit my regard, you may always depend upon the warmest attachment and sincere affection of your friend and uncle. George Washington, letter to his nephew, George Steptoe Washington, as Washington prepared to leave Mount Vernon to assume the presidency, 1788. I cannot afford to give you gold watches. Let me start again. I cannot afford to give gold watches to children. When you are more of a man, perhaps, if you have behaved well, I may give you one, or something that is better. You should remember that I am at a great expense for your education, to pay for your board and clothing and instruction and learning that may be useful to you when you are grown up, and you should not tease me for expensive things that can be of little service to you. Benjamin Franklin, letter to his grandson Benny, January 25th, 1782. Now, sirs, for my griefs. The dear partner of my life for 54 years as a wife, and for Benny more as a lover, now lies in extremis, forbidden to speak or to be spoken to. If human life is a bubble, no matter how soon it breaks, if it is, as I firmly believe, an immortal existence, we ought patiently to wait the instructions of the great teacher. John Adams, letter to Thomas Jefferson, October 7, 1818. A brother may not be a friend, but a friend will always be a brother. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, May 1752. You are a member of Parliament, and one of that majority which has doomed my country to destruction. You have begun to burn our towns and murder our people. Look upon your hands. They are stained with the blood of your relations. You and I were long friends. You are now my enemy, and I am yours. Benjamin Franklin, letter to William Strahan, written July 5th, 1775, but never sent. Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence. True friendship is a plant of slow growth, and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to the appellation. George Washington, letter to his nephew, Bushrod Washington, January 15, 1783. No better relation than a prudent and faithful friend. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, May 1737. A slender acquaintance with the world must convince every man that actions, not words, are the true criteria of the attachment of his friends. George Washington, letter to John Sullivan, December 15, 1779. Tranquility is the old man's milk. I go to enjoy it in a few days, and to exchange the roar and tumult of bulls and bears for the prattle of my grandchildren and senile rest. Thomas Jefferson, letter to Edward Rutledge, June 24th, 1797. You and I not to die before we have explained ourselves to each other. John Adams, letter to Thomas Jefferson, July 15th, 1813. I see no comfort in outliving one's friends and remaining a mere monument of the times which are past. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to Charles Pinckney, September 3rd, 1816. People who live long drink of the cup of life to the very bottom and must expect to meet with some of the usual dregs. And when I reflect on the number of terrible maladies human nature is subject to, I think myself favored in having only 3 incurable ones that have fallen to my share, viz. The gout, the stone, and old age, and that these have not yet deprived me of my natural cheerfulness, my delight in books, and enjoyment of social conversation. There are many sorrows in this life, but we must not blame Providence inconsiderately, for there are many more pleasures. This is why I love life. Benjamin Franklin, from his autobiography. Wisdom of the Founding Fathers. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1758. Vain man, mind your own business. Do no wrong. Do all the good you can. Eat your canvas-back ducks. Drink your burgundy. Sleep your siesta when necessary, and trust in God. John Adams, Letter to Thomas Jefferson, March 14th, 1820. Associate yourself with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation, for 'tis better to be alone than in bad company. George Washington, Rules of Civility, 1747. Your affectionate mother requests that I would address to you, as a namesake, something which might have a favorable influence on the course of the life you have to run. Few words are necessary with good dispositions on your part. Adore God, reverence and cherish your parents, love your neighbor as yourself, and your country more than life. Be just, be true, murmur not at the ways of Providence, and the life into which you have entered will be a passage to one of eternal and ineffable bliss. And if to the dead it is permitted to care for the things of this world, every action of your life will be under my regard. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to Thomas Jefferson Grochin, January 10th, 1824. I could say 1,000 things to you if I had leisure. I could dwell on the importance of piety and religion, of industry and frugality, of prudence, economy, regularity, and even government, all of which are essential to the well-being of a family. But I have not time. I cannot, however, help repeating piety because I think it's indispensable. Religion in a family is at once its brightest ornament and its best security. Samuel Adams, addressing his future son-in-law, November 22nd, 1780. The rewards in this life are esteem and admiration of others. The punishments are neglect and contempt. The desire of the esteem of others is as real a want of nature as hunger, and the neglect and contempt of the world as severe a pain as the gout or stone. John Adams, Discourses on Davila, 1790. Be studious in your profession, and you will be learned. Be industrious and frugal, and you will be rich. Be sober and temperate, and you will be healthy. Be in general virtuous, and you will be happy. At least you will, by such conduct, stand the best chance for such consequences. Benjamin Franklin, Letter to John Allen, August 9th, 1768. An honest man can feel no pleasure in the exercise of power over his fellow citizens. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to John Mellish, January 13th, 1813. To lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, October 1733. Power always thinks it has a great soul and vast views beyond the comprehension of the weak, and that it is doing God's service when it is violating all his laws. John Adams, Letter to Thomas Jefferson, February 2nd, 1816. A decalogue of canons for observations in practical life. Never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Never trouble another for what you can do yourself. Never spend your money before you have it. Never buy what you do not want because it is cheap. It will be dear to you. Pride costs us more than hunger, thirst, and cold. We never repent of having eaten too little. Nothing is troublesome that we do willingly. How much pain have cost us the evils which have never happened? Take things away by their smooth handle. When angry, count to 10 before you speak. If very angry, 100. Thomas Jefferson. Letter to Thomas Jefferson Smith, February 21, 1825. Also included in Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. A thing moderately good is not so good as it ought to be. Moderation in temper is always a virtue, but moderation in principle is always a vice. Thomas Paine, The Rights of Man, 1791. Delay is preferable to error. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to George Washington, May 16, 1792. The sovereign invigorator of the body is exercise, and of all exercises, walking is best. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to Thomas Mann Randolph, Jr., August 27, 1786. Give about 2 hours every day to exercise, for health must not be sacrificed to learning. A strong body makes the mind strong. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to Peter Carr, August 19, 1785. In general, mankind, since the improvement of cookery, eat about twice as much as nature requires. Suppers are not bad if we have not dined, but restless nights naturally follow hearty suppers after full dinners. Indeed, as there is a difference in constitutions, some rest well after those meals. It costs them only a frightful dream and an apoplexy, after which they sleep till doomsday. Nothing is more common in the newspapers than instances of people who, after eating a hearty supper, are found dead in a bed in the morning. Benjamin Franklin from his autobiography. Time is money. Benjamin Franklin. Advice to a young tradesman, 1748. If you would know the value of money, go and try to borrow some. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1758. Beware of little expenses. Benjamin Franklin, Maxims and Morals from Dr. Franklin, 1807. It is while we are young that the habit of industry is formed. If not, then it never is afterwards. The fortune of our lives, therefore, depends on employing well the short period of youth. Thomas Jefferson, Letter to Martha Jefferson Randolph, March 28, 1787. Laziness travels so slowly that poverty soon overtakes him. Benjamin Franklin, The Way to Wealth, July 7, 1757. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that's the stuff life is made of. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1746. Youth is the seed time of good habits, as well in nations as in individuals. Thomas Paine, Common Sense, 1776. Tomorrow every fault is to be amended, but that tomorrow never comes. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, July 1756. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently and justly, and if you speak, speak accordingly. Benjamin Franklin from his autobiography. Don't throw stones at your neighbors if your own windows are glass. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1736. It is better to offer no excuse than a bad one. George Washington, Letter to his niece, Harriet Washington, October 30th, 1791. Think of 3 things: whence you came, where you are going, and to whom you must account. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, 1755. About the Founding Fathers. John Adams, 1735 to 1826. Born to a long line of yeoman farmers, John Adams was a teacher, farmer, and lawyer by trade. He was driven into the revolutionary movement by the Stamp Act and soon found himself consumed with the cause of the Patriots. Adams was a member of the Continental Congress 1774 to 1778 and a key figure in getting George Washington's appointment for Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He was later Commissioner to France, Minister to Netherlands and England. He was one of the negotiators of the Treaty of Paris, the first Vice President and the second President of the United States. He died at the age of 91 on the same day as Thomas Jefferson, July 4, 1826, 50 years after signing the Declaration of Independence. Samuel Adams, 1722 to 1803. Born to a prosperous father who was a prominent brewer and landowner, Samuel Adams drifted from one job to another in his younger years, but found his calling as an expert instigator and organizer of propaganda and colonial resistance during the Revolutionary period. He was a member of Continental Congress, 1774 to 1775, though overshadowed by his second cousin, John Adams. He was later elected to Lieutenant Governor, Interim Governor, and Governor of Massachusetts. Charles Carroll, 1737 to 1832. Born to a wealthy landowning Irish Catholic family in Maryland, Carroll was educated at home and abroad, but was barred from public life for nearly a decade because of his Roman Catholic faith. In the 1770s, he became a champion for the revolutionary cause through his newspaper writings and was a prominent player in the movement from then on. A member of Continental Congress from 1776 to 1778, Carroll was the only Roman Catholic to sign the Declaration of Independence. He later served as one of Maryland's first U.S. senators. Living to the age of 95, he became the last surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence. John Dickinson, 1732 to 1808. Born to a moderately wealthy family in Maryland, Dickinson went on to study law and became involved with the revolutionary movement with the Stamp Act. He is known as the penman of the Revolution for his influential work entitled Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, in which he refuted Great Britain's right to taxation of the colonies. He was a militia officer during the Revolutionary War and a member of Continental Congress 1774 to 1776. He did not vote in favor of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, though he supported the cause of independence during the war and thereafter. Benjamin Franklin, 1706 to 1790. Born to a candle and soap maker, Franklin received some formal education but was largely self-taught. After an apprenticeship with his father, he went on to work as a printer with his half-brother and later founded a colonial newspaper. He went on to publish Poor Richard's Almanac, which became widely popular in the colonies and abroad. For a period of years, Franklin lived in England as an agent of several of the colonies and defended the colonial position in the House of Commons during the Stamp Act crisis. Upon his return from Europe in 1775, he became a member of the Continental Congress 1775 and was on the committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence. He returned to Europe as a diplomat and was instrumental in garnering French aid and military assistance during the war. He negotiated the Treaty of Paris along with John Jay and John Adams, and he played a pivotal role in the proceedings of the Constitutional Convention in May of 1787. Nathan Hale, 1755 to 1776. A Connecticut-born schoolteacher, Hale joined the Connecticut militia and later became an officer in the Continental Army. He volunteered for an espionage mission, was caught by the British in Manhattan and hanged following the Battle of Long Island. Alexander Hamilton, 1757 to 1804. Born on the British West Indian island of Nevis, Hamilton was schooled in the colonies and went on to become an officer in the Continental Army, as well as an aide-de-camp and staff lawyer to Washington, and later appointed to lieutenant colonel. He was a member of the Continental Congress 1782, 1783, 1787, 1788, and an organizer of the Constitutional Convention. Hamilton was additionally known as the ratifier of the Constitution, as he was instrumental in getting the Constitution ratified by the states. Hamilton authored 51 of the 85 Federalist Papers, which were enormously influential in achieving ratification of the Constitution. He was the first Secretary of the Treasury, founder of the Bank of New York and the New York Post. Hamilton was killed in a duel with Aaron Burr in 1804. Patrick Henry, 1736 to 1799. Born into the Virginia gentry, Henry was a planter, businessman, and lawyer before he became involved in the Revolutionary movement. He was commander-in-chief of the Virginia militia, a member of the Continental Congress, 1774 to 1776, a member of the Virginia General Assembly and House of Burgesses, and was a 5-time governor of Virginia. He is best remembered for his fiery oratory. Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826. Born to a prominent Virginia family, Jefferson was schooled with private tutors before going to college at William and Mary, followed by the study of law. He was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, member of Continental Congress, 1775, 1776, 1783 to 1785, and primary drafter of the Declaration of Independence. He went on to become the governor of Virginia, commissioner to France, minister to France, secretary of state, vice president, and third president of the United States. In his final years, Jefferson founded the University of Virginia. Jefferson died at the age of 83, only hours before the death of John Adams on July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. John Jay, 1745 to 1829. Born to a wealthy merchant family in New York City, Jay was tutored privately and later studied law at King's College, the forerunner to Columbia University. He was a member of Continental Congress 1774 to 1777, 1778, 1779, and was a key figure in achieving ratification of the Constitution with his contribution to the Federalist Papers. He was the governor of New York, one of the negotiators of the Treaty of Paris, and was appointed by George Washington as the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. John Paul Jones, 1747 to 1792. Jones was a Scottish-born mercantile marine who settled in Virginia and entered the Navy at the outset of the Revolutionary War. He was the first man assigned the rank of first lieutenant in the Continental Navy and is known as the father of the American Navy. His record of naval victories earned him the Gold Medal by Congress in 1787. Henry Lee, 1756 to 1818. Born in Virginia and educated at the forerunner to Princeton University, Lee put a legal career on hold to enter the Revolutionary War. Known as Light Horse Harry, he was an unsurpassed cavalry commander during the war, was a member of the Virginia legislature, member of Continental Congress 1785 to 1788, governor of Virginia, and a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He was also the father of Robert E. Lee. John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg, 1746 to 1807. Son of Henry Melchior Muhlenberg, a founder of the Lutheran Church in America, John became a pastor himself and was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses. In 1775, he famously finished his sermon and left to join Washington's troops. He served throughout the war and was promoted to the rank of Major General. He later served as both a U.S. congressman and senator. Thomas Paine, 1737 to 1809. Born in rural England, Paine worked as a corset maker, inventor, and pamphleteer before immigrating to America at the age of 37 on the advice of Benjamin Franklin. Paine's pamphlet series entitled The American Crisis and signed Common Sense was highly influential in furthering the cause for American independence. He served in the Continental Army and continued to write installments of The Crisis devoted to the revolutionary cause. He later went back to Europe, where he wrote The Rights of Man in defense of the revolutionary movement in France. After being banned from England for treason and imprisoned and nearly executed in Paris as an Englishman, Paine returned to America at the invitation of President Thomas Jefferson, but lived his remaining years in poverty and isolation. Jonas Parker, 1729 to 1775, a Massachusetts-born farmer and soldier from the French and Indian War, who commanded his militia at the Battle of Lexington on April 19, 1775. Parker was ill with consumption on the day of the battle and was unable to participate in any future battles. He died 5 months later. James Madison, 1751 to 1836. Born to prosperous Virginia plantation owners, Madison was the eldest of 12 children. He attended what would become Princeton University and was the first postgraduate student at the school. He was a member of the Virginia legislature, member of Constitutional Congress 1780 to 1783, delegate to the Constitutional Convention, U.S. Congressman, Secretary of State, and 4th President of the United States. He is known as the father of the Constitution and was the chief architect of the document. He authored 29 of the Federalist Papers, which played a pivotal role in achieving ratification of the Constitution. As a member of the first U.S. Congress, he sponsored the Bill of Rights. As Secretary of State, he engineered the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, and as President, he successfully led the country through the War of 1812. John Marshall, 1755 to 1835. Born in a log cabin in rural Virginia, the eldest of 15 children, Marshall was largely educated by private tutors. He was a captain in the Revolutionary War and served with George Washington at Valley Forge. He was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, U.S. Minister to France, U.S. Congressman, Secretary of State, and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, a position that he held for 34 years. While Chief Justice, he had an enormous impact on the judicial system, established the doctrine of judicial review, and participated in more than 1,000 legal decisions. George Mason, 1725 to 1792. Born to a family of wealthy Virginia plantation owners, but brought up largely by an uncle after his father died when he was 10, Mason became one of the richest men in Virginia, owning thousands of acres in Virginia and Ohio. He was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, author of the Virginia Constitution and Virginia Bill of Rights, delegate to the Constitutional Convention, but failed to sign the Constitution out of criticism that it failed to effectively protect citizens' rights. He advocated that Congress adopt the Bill of Rights and is considered the father of the Bill of Rights as the principal author of the document. William Prescott, 1722 to 1795. The Massachusetts-born Prescott served as a colonel in the Revolutionary Army. He fortified Breed's Hill on the night of June 16, 1775, and commanded his troops the next day in the Battle of Bunker Hill. To conserve ammunition, Prescott famously told his troops, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Josiah Quincy, 1744 to 1775. Massachusetts-born lawyer and patriot Quincy wrote many articles in support of the cause for freedom, most notably Observations of the Act of Parliament, commonly called the Boston Port Bill, with thoughts on civil society and standing arms. In 1774, Quincy was sent on a secret mission to England to advocate the cause of the colonists to sympathetic British politicians, but died at sea from tuberculosis on his return trip. Benjamin Rush, 1745 to 1813. Born near Philadelphia to a family of farmers, Rush's father died when Rush was 5, and he was brought up by a maternal uncle who provided for his schooling. He graduated from what is now Princeton University, studied medicine in Philadelphia, and earned his medical degree from the University of Edinburgh. He was a member of Continental Congress 1776-1777, signer of the Declaration of Independence, Surgeon General of the Continental Army, and Treasurer of the U.S. Mint. He set up the first free medical clinic and later helped to found the first American Anti-Slavery Society. George Washington, 1732 to 1799. The first son of Augustine Washington and his second wife, Mary Ball Washington, George was educated largely at home by his father and elder half-brother, Lawrence. When George was 11, his father died. He then lived with his mother at Ferry Farm in Fredericksburg and visited his half-brother, Lawrence, at Mount Vernon, which he inherited upon Lawrence's death. He obtained his surveying license from William and Mary College in 1749. In 1754, he was commissioned as a lieutenant colonel and fought in the French and Indian War from 1755 to 1758, whereupon he retired to Mount Vernon to live the life of a gentleman farmer. In 1759, he married Martha Parke Custis, a wealthy widow with 2 children. Martha was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses and member of Continental Congress 1774-1775. He was elected to command all Continental armies in June of 1775 and led the successful campaign against the British that ultimately forced their surrender on October 19, 1781. Washington again retired to Mount Vernon, but resumed his public duties when he was unanimously chosen as the first president under the new Constitution. He was unanimously re-elected in 1793, but refused a 3rd term. After a farewell address to the American people, he retired from public life. He died at the age of 67 from a severe throat infection on the night of December 14, 1799. John Witherspoon, 1723 to 1794. Scottish-born clergyman, Witherspoon emigrated to the colonies to accept the presidency at the College of New Jersey, forerunner to Princeton University. Advocating resistance to the Crown in his sermons, essays, and addresses, he became involved in the Revolutionary movement and was member of Continental Congress 1776 to 1779, 1780 to 1781, 1782. Was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and spent the latter part of his life rebuilding the college, which had been burned and destroyed in part by the British during the war. And I'm going to read the back portion of this book as we are finishing up here. This volume includes extracts from texts published in the founders' lifetimes in which they exchanged ideas on the meaning of justice, the evils of slavery, the role of the patriot, and the pitfalls of politics. Here, too, are candid excerpts from correspondence in which they express fears about the perilous times they face and their hopes for a brighter future. Read the thoughts and beliefs of the Founding Fathers in their own words and rediscover the ideals, heroism, and greatness that have been a part of America from the very beginning. Carol Kelly Genji is an editor and attorney. She is the editor of such titles as The Essential Wisdom of the Saints, Abraham Lincoln, His Essential Wisdom, Mother Teresa, Her Essential Wisdom, and Raising the Bar, a Lawyer's Book of Quotes. She lives in New Jersey with her husband and 2 children. And I hope you enjoyed that. And I thank you all for listening and tuning in. And if you like my channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and good night.